I never thought I'd be the one to say this, but my life's a mess. A big stinking pile of regrets and missed opportunities. And the worst part? It's all my own damn fault. Let me take you back to where it all went wrong. Picture this. A lavish party at my house, the kind I'd become famous for throwing. The champagne was flowing, the canapes were divine, and the guest list was a who's who of San Francisco's elite. I was in my element, working the room like the seasoned real estate executive I am. But then I saw Ryan, my husband, refilling the cheese platter. Something inside me snapped. Oh, look, everyone. I called out, my voice dripping with mockery. Isn't my husband just the perfect little housewife? The room erupted in laughter. I saw Ryan's face fall, but I was too caught up in the moment to care. Tell us, Ryan, chimed in Veronica, my catty neighbor, do you wear a frilly apron when you vacuum? More laughter. Ryan's knuckles were white as he gripped the platter. I bet he makes a mean pot roast, added Charles, a smug investment banker I'd been trying to land as a client. I should have stopped it there. I should have defended my husband, the father of my children, the man who'd given up his career to support mine. But I didn't. Instead, I went for the kill. Oh, he does more than that. You should see him with a feather duster. It's like watching Baryshnikov dance. The room howled. I felt powerful in control. But then I saw Ryan's eyes. They were cold, filled with a hurt and anger I'd never seen before. He set down the platter with a clang that silenced the room. You know what, Emma? He said, his voice low and dangerous. You can serve your own damn cheese. And with that, he walked out. Not just out of the party, but out of my life as I knew it. As the door slammed behind him, I felt a chill run down my spine. What had I done? But let me back up a bit. How did I, Emma Hartley, 45-year-old real estate mogul, end up in this mess? It all started with my father, Richard Hartley. A stern man with a penchant for control, he ran our household like a military operation. Everything had to be just so, from the perfectly mowed lawn to the immaculate interior of our home. Emma, he'd say, his voice as crisp as his freshly ironed shirts, control is power, and power is everything. Those words became my mantra. I applied them to every aspect of my life. In college, I was the one organizing study groups and planning events. When I met Ryan, I took charge of our relationship, even down to planning our wedding. Ryan was different from the other men I dated. He was laid back, creative, and didn't seem to mind my take-charge attitude. In fact, he seemed to find it attractive. You're like a force of nature, Em, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. I love watching you work your magic. When we had our kids, Zoe and Max, it seemed natural for Ryan to stay home. I was on the fast track at work, climbing the corporate ladder with a ferocity that surprised even me. I've got this, I tell Ryan as I rushed out the door each morning, briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other. You focus on the kids. And focus on the kids he did. While I was closing deals and smoozing clients, Ryan was teaching Zoe to ride a bike and helping Max with his science projects. I told myself it was for the best. After all, I was providing for our family, wasn't I? But as the years went by, something started to shift. The kids grew more distant. Family dinners became a rarity, replaced by quick bites between meetings and late-night work sessions. One night, I came home later than usual. The house was quiet, the kids already in bed. I found Ryan in the kitchen, nursing a glass of whiskey. Hey, I said, dropping my keys on the counter. Sorry I'm late. Big client dinner. Ryan didn't look up. Zoe had her dance recital today. My stomach dropped. That was today. I thought it was next week. No, it was today. She looked for you in the audience. I had to tell her you couldn't make it. The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I'll make it up to her, I promised. Rain finally looked at me, his eyes tired. Have, Emma? How are you going to make up for all the moments you've missed? I didn't have an answer for him. Instead, I did what I always did when faced with a problem I couldn't solve. I threw myself into work. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, property viewings, and networking events. I told myself I was doing it for my family, that every deal I closed was securing their future. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was hiding. Then came the day I tried to fix everything with a home-cooked meal. I'd seen it in a movie once. A career-driven mother reconnecting with her family over a lovingly prepared dinner. It seemed foolproof. I left work early, at 6 p.m. instead of 9 p.m., and stopped by the grocery store. I had no idea what my family liked to eat anymore, so I grabbed whatever looked good. Organic vegetables, prime-cut steak, some fancy French cheese I couldn't pronounce. By the time everyone got home, the kitchen was a disaster zone, and I was frazzled. But I'd managed to put together what I thought was a decent meal. Surprise! I called out as they walked in. I made dinner. The looks on their faces were not what I'd expected. Confusion, maybe even a hint of disappointment. But it's pizza night, Max said, his voice small. Pizza night? I echoed. Ryan nodded. Yeah, every Thursday. We order from Tony's down the street. The kids look forward to it all week. I felt my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. I hadn't known. There's a lot you don't know, Emma, Ryan said softly. We ate in uncomfortable silence, the kids picking at the unfamiliar food. As soon as they were done, they disappeared to their rooms, leaving Ryan and me alone. I was trying to do something nice, I said, my voice cracking. Ryan sighed. I know, but Emma, you can't fix years of neglect with one meal. His words stung, but I knew he was right. I'd been so focused on controlling my career, on being the best, that I'd lost control of what really mattered. The next day, I threw myself back into work with renewed vigor. If I couldn't control my family life, at least I could control this. I started throwing more parties, each one more extravagant than the last. I told myself it was for networking, for advancing my career, but really, it was a distraction. Which brings us back to that fateful party. The one where I humiliated Ryan in front of everyone. The one that might have been the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. After Ryan stormed out, the party quickly fizzled. I made some weak excuses about him not feeling well, but I could see the judgment in people's eyes. They'd witnessed something ugly, something that couldn't be smoothed over with another glass of champagne. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, Ryan was gone before I woke up. The kids were sullen at breakfast, barely speaking to me. Where's Dad? So asked, pushing her cereal around the bowl. He had to leave early, I lied. Max, always the perceptive one, saw right through me. It's because of what you said at the party, isn't it? I felt my throat tighten. You heard that? He nodded. We both did. Mom, how could you? I had no answer. How could I explain to my children that their mother was so desperate for approval, so addicted to control, that she'd thrown their father under the bus for a cheap laugh? The next few weeks were hell. Ryan barely spoke to me, only communicating through terse text messages about the kids' schedules. So and Max retreated further into their own worlds, their doors always closed when I was home. I tried to make amends. I cut back on my hours at work, started coming home for dinner, but it felt like too little, too late. The damage had been done. One night, I found Ryan packing a suitcase. What are you doing? I asked, my heart racing. He didn't look up. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. I need some time to think. Think about what? I knew the answer, but I needed to hear him say it. About us, Emma. About whether this marriage is still working. The words hit me like a physical blow. Ryan, please, we can fix this. I'll do better, I promise. He finally met my eyes, and I saw a mixture of sadness and resignation. That's just it, Emma. You've been saying that for years, but nothing ever changes. You're still the same controlling, work-obsessed woman I married, and I'm not sure I can live with that anymore. As he walked out the door, I felt my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. I'd always prided myself on being in control, on having all the answers. But now, faced with the prospect of losing my family, I realized how little control I actually had. The next few months were a blur of therapy sessions, tense family dinners, and sleepless nights. I threw myself into trying to reconnect with my kids, but it was like trying to scale a wall with my bare hands. Every time I thought I was making progress, I'd say or do something that reminded them of the absent mother I'd been for so long. One afternoon, I came home early to find Zoe crying in her room. When I asked what was wrong, she hesitated before answering. "I had got my first period," she said, her voice small. My heart broke. This was a milestone moment, one that should have brought us closer together. Instead, my daughter had been alone and scared. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, moving to hug her. She stiffened in my arms. "Why didn't you call me?" Zoe pulled away, her eyes red. "Because you're never here, Mom. And when you are, you're always distracted. I didn't think you'd care." Her words were like a knife to my heart. "Of course I care, Zoe. You're my daughter. I love you more than anything." She looked at me skeptically. "More than work?" I opened my mouth to say yes, of course, but the words stuck in my throat. Because the truth was, for years, work had come first. My career, my success, my need for control, they had all taken precedence over my family. That night, I sat alone in my home office, surrounded by awards and accolades that suddenly seemed meaningless. I picked up a framed photo from my desk, a family portrait from years ago. We were all smiling, Ryan's arm around my waist, the kids beaming up at us. We looked happy, unified. When I had lost sight of what really mattered. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work. Instead, I spent the day cleaning out my closet, packing up designer suits and stilettos I'd use as armor in the corporate world. When Ryan came to pick up the kids for the weekend, he looked at me quizzically. "New look?" he asked, taking in my jeans and simple blouse. I shrugged. Just trying something different. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old warmth in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared, replaced by the guarded look I'd grown accustomed to. As the kids piled into his car, I felt a pang of longing. This used to be my family, my life. Now, I was on the outside looking in. That weekend, alone in the house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, I did a lot of soul searching. I thought about my father, about the lessons he taught me. Control is power. Power is everything. But what good was power if you were alone? I thought about the clients I'd wined and dined, the deals I'd closed, the accolades I'd received. None of it seemed to matter now, not when my family was slipping through my fingers. On Sunday night, as I waited for Ryan to bring the kids home, I made a decision. It was time for a change. A real change, not just empty promises and temporary fixes. When they walked in, I was waiting in the living room. The kids looked wary, Ryan confused. "Family meeting," I said, patting the couch beside me. They sat, exchanging glances. I took a deep breath. "I owe you all an apology," I began. "Actually, more than an apology. I owe you an explanation and a promise." And so I talked. I told them about my childhood, about the pressure I'd always felt to be in control. I talked about my fears of failure, of vulnerability, of losing the power I'd worked so hard to gain. But I realize now, I said, my voice cracking, that in trying to control everything, I've lost what matters most. You, all of you. I looked at each of them in turn. Max, his eyes wide and uncertain. So, biting her lip, as she always did when she was emotional. And Ryan, his expression unreadable. "I can't promise. I'll get everything right from now on," I continued. "But I can promise that from this moment on, you are my priority. Not work, not status, not control. You." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to my surprise, it was Max who spoke first. "Does this mean you'll come to my science fair next week?" I felt a lump in my throat. Wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy. So was next. And maybe we could go shopping together. For, girl stuff. I nodded, blinking back tears. I'd love that. Finally, I looked at Ryan. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "It's not going to be easy, Emma. There's a lot of hurt to work through." "I know," I said, "but I'm willing to do the work. If you are." He didn't answer right away, and I felt my heart sink. But then he reached out and took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The next few months were some of the hardest of my life. Changing ingrained behaviors, learning to let go of control. It was like learning to walk all over again. There were stumbles, setbacks, moments when I wanted nothing more than to retreat back into my old patterns. But I persevered. I cut back my hours at work, delegating tasks I would have once insisted on handling myself. I started attending therapy, both on my own and with Ryan. I made time for family dinners, for helping with homework, for just sitting and talking with my kids. It wasn't always smooth sailing. There were arguments, tears, moments of frustration on all sides. But slowly, gradually, things began to change. I was there when Max's science project won first prize, cheering louder than any other parent. I helped Zoe navigate the confusing world of middle school drama, offering advice and a shoulder to cry on. And Ryan, well, we were taking it one day at a time, rebuilding our relationship brick by brick. One evening, about 6 months after that fateful party, we were all sitting in the living room. Max and Zoe were squabbling good-naturedly over the remote, while Ryan and I sat side by side on the couch. Without thinking, I reached out and took his hand. To my surprise, he didn't pull away. Instead, he laced his fingers through mine and gave a gentle squeeze. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. For the first time in years, I felt truly connected to my family, and I realized something profound. True power isn't about control. It's about love, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. It's about putting others first and having the strength to admit when you're wrong. As I looked around at my family, imperfect, messy, but together, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known before. This, I realized, was what real success looked like. I still have a long way to go. Old habits die hard, and there are still days when I struggle with my need for control. But now, when I feel that urge rising, I look at the family photo on my desk, a new one taken just last week. Continuation of the previous content. In it, we're all laughing, our arms around each other, genuine smiles on our faces. It reminds me of what I'm working towards, what really matters. As I sit here now, reflecting on my journey, I can't help but marvel at how much has changed. The Emma of a year ago would hardly recognize me now. Gone are the power suits and the constant need to be in charge. In their place is a woman who's learning to listen, to compromise, to put her family first. But let me be clear, it hasn't been easy. There have been moments of doubt, times when I've been tempted to fall back into old patterns. Like the day I almost missed Zoe's dance recital because of a last-minute work crisis. I was sitting in my office, staring at my computer screen, when my phone buzzed with a reminder. Zoe's recital was in an hour. At the same time, my email pinged with an urgent message from a high-profile client. They needed me to review a contract ASAP. The old Emma wouldn't have hesitated. She would have fired off a quick apology text to Zoe and dived into the contract. But as I reached for my phone, I caught sight of the family photo on my desk. I remembered the hurt in Zoe's eyes when I'd missed her events in the past. With a deep breath, I called my assistant. "Janet," I said, "I need you to handle the Peterson contract. I've got a family commitment." "But Ms. Hartley," Janet protested, "you always handle the big clients yourself." "Not anymore," I replied, already reaching for my coat. "I trust you, Janet. You can do this." As I rushed out of the office, I felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. I was letting go of control, trusting someone else to handle an important task. It was terrifying and liberating. I made it to the recital with minutes to spare. The look on Zoe's face when she saw me in the audience was worth more than any business deal. And you know what? The contract got signed without a hitch. Janet did a fantastic job. That night was a turning point for me. I realized that letting go didn't mean everything would fall apart. In fact, it often led to better outcomes than I could have imagined. Take my relationship with Ryan, for instance. In the past, I'd always insisted on managing our finances, convinced that I knew best. But as part of our therapy, I agreed to let Ryan take over the household budget. At first, it was agonizing. I'd find myself peeking over his shoulder, biting my tongue to keep from offering suggestions. But Ryan surprised me. He had a knack for finding deals I'd overlooked, and his more relaxed approach actually reduced our overall stress about money. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table going over the monthly expenses, I found myself marveling at how much easier it all seemed. "You're really good at this," I admitted. Ryan looked up, a hint of a smile on his face. "You sound surprised." I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. "I guess I am. I always thought. Well, I always assumed I was better with money." He reached across the table and took my hand. "You know, Ian, you don't have to be the best at everything. It's okay to let others take the lead sometimes." His words hit home. How much stress had I caused myself, and others, but always needing to be in control? How many opportunities had I missed to see the strengths in those around me? From that day on, I made a conscious effort to step back and let others shine. At work, I started delegating more, trusting my team to handle tasks I would have once insisted on doing myself. To my surprise, not only did this reduce my stress levels, but it also led to more innovative solutions as different perspectives came into play. At home, I learned to appreciate Ryan's parenting style instead of always trying to impose my own. Where I was structured and goal-oriented, he was spontaneous and playful. Together, we balanced each other out, giving our kids a rich, varied upbringing. But perhaps the biggest change came in how I interacted with my children. Instead of always trying to guide and direct them, I learned to listen, really listen, to what they were saying. One Saturday afternoon, I was helping Max with his homework. Or rather, I was trying to help. He was struggling with a math problem, and I was getting frustrated. "Come on, Max," I said, my voice tight. "We've been over this. You just need to apply the formula." Max threw down his pencil. "I can't do it, Mom. I'm just not good at math." In the past, I would have pushed harder, insisting that he could do it if he just tried. But this time, I took a deep breath and really looked at my son. His shoulders were hunched, his face pinched with anxiety. This wasn't just about math. "Hey," I said softly, closing the textbook. "Let's take a break. Want to go for a walk?" Max looked up, surprised. "Don't we need to finish this?" I shook my head. "It can wait. Come on, let's get some fresh air." As we walked around the neighborhood, I let Max lead the conversation. He talked about school, his friends, a new video game he was excited about. Gradually, he began to open up about his struggles in math class. "Everyone else seems to get it so easily," he confessed. "I feel stupid." My heart ached. How had I missed this? I'd been so focused on pushing him to succeed that I hadn't seen his pain. "Max," I said, stopping and kneeling down to his level. "You are not stupid. Not even close. You know, when I was your age, I struggled with science." His eyes widened. "You did, but you're so smart." I laughed. Being smart doesn't mean being good at everything. It means recognizing your strengths and not being afraid to ask for help with your weaknesses. We spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming ways to make math more manageable for Max. We looked into tutoring options, talked about study strategies, and even found some math-based games he could play to build his skills. By the time we got home, Max was in better spirits. As he headed up to his room, he turned back to me. "Thanks, Mom," he said, "for listening." Those 3 words meant more to me than any business accolade ever had. As the months went by, I found myself settling into a new rhythm. Work was still important, but it no longer consumed me. I learned to set boundaries, to say no to late-night meetings and weekend calls. And you know what? My career didn't suffer. If anything, I became more effective, my decisions sharper, because I was well rested and balanced. At home, the atmosphere changed. There was more laughter, more spontaneity. Family game nights became a regular thing, with fierce competitions over board games and charades. We started taking weekend trips, exploring nearby towns and parks. These outings weren't meticulously planned like our old vacations. Instead, we'd often just pick a direction and see where the road took us. One such trip led us to a small coastal town we'd never visited before. As we wandered the quaint streets, popping into quirky shops and sampling local treats, I felt a sense of contentment I'd never known before. We ended up on the beach as the sun was setting. So and Max were chasing each other through the waves, their laughter carried on the salty breeze. Ryan and I sat on the sand watching them. They're growing up so fast, I muse. Ryan nodded. They are. But you know what? We're not missing it anymore. I leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around me. No, I agreed. We're not. As I sat there, with the warmth of my husband beside me and the joyful sounds of my children in the background, I realized something profound. This moment, imperfect, unplanned, sand in my shoes and all, was worth more than any corner office or prestigious award. I thought back to my father's words. Control is power. Power is everything. For so long, I'd lived by that mantra, believing that if I could just control every aspect of my life, I'd be happy. But true happiness, I now knew, came from letting go. From embracing the messy, unpredictable, beautiful chaos of life and love. Don't get me wrong. I still have my moments. There are days when the old Emma rears her head, wanting to take charge and micromanage. But now, I have tools to deal with those impulses. I have a supportive family who gently reminds me when I'm slipping into old habits. And I have the wisdom to know that it's okay not to be perfect. As I write this, sitting in my home office, which has been repurposed into a family study space, I can hear the sounds of my family in the other room. Ryan's attempting to teach the kids how to make his famous lasagna, a task that's sure to end in laughter and a messy kitchen. A year ago, I would have been stressed about the mess, about the inefficiency of letting the kids help with dinner. Now I smile, looking forward to joining them once I finish up here. My journey is far from over. Every day brings new challenges, new opportunities to choose connection over control, love over power. But I'm no longer afraid of those challenges. Instead, I embrace them, knowing that each one is a chance to grow, to love, to truly live. To anyone out there who recognizes themselves in my story, anyone who sacrificed their personal life on the altar of success and control, I say this: it's not too late to change. The road isn't easy, but it's worth it. Let go of the need to control everything. Embrace the beautiful mess of life and love. Trust me, the view from here is pretty spectacular. As for me, I'm off to join my family in the kitchen. There's a lasagna to be made and memories to be created. And really, isn't that what life is all about?